Hello everyone! If you usually watch my content, you'll know that most of the time the Lone Tweedle is the one speaking, guiding you through stories, music, and everything connected to Lauyara. But today's a little different. Today you have me, the one and only Tweedle Jess. I wanted to step in myself because there's something I've not yet properly explained, which is quite intentional. Since announcing Lauyara, I have referenced it a lot, but I've never actually stopped to say what it is yet, where it came from, or why I built it in the first place. So this video is the beginning of something new. This is the first entry in the Atlas of Lauyara. And this series will be me, Tweedle Jess, explaining the world behind everything that you have seen or that I have mentioned. And over time, the Lone Tweedle will continue to tell stories within Lauyara, and there will also be other character perspectives introduced more clearly in the future. But the Atlas itself is different. This is where I explain the world as its creator, and so with that being said, let's begin. So, Lauyara started forming when I moved from the Tweedles into the Lone Tweedle. Around that time, I found myself being pulled back towards my love of fantasy. I started listening to fantasy soundtracks again, watching, fantasy worlds and reconnecting with elf-inspired aesthetics and storytelling. And I've always had a strong fascination with elves, their self-control, grace, wisdom, their sense of being slightly removed from the chaos of everything else, their agility, And at the same time, I'm also a maladaptive daydreamer. So my internal world has always been very visual, very story-based and very layered. So Lauyara became a way to give that somewhere to exist out here. So the main inspirations behind it come from The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Chronicles of Narnia, and The Witcher. These worlds have always felt like more than just settings. They felt like systems of meaning, where places represented ideas and not just geography. And after the Primal Life competition, I started feeling very creatively stuck, and I didn't want to keep producing the same type of content in the same way. It just didn't really work. It worked for us as a duo, but not for me as a soloist. And I also really wanted to do fantasy-inspired creative work, including photo shoots and visual storytelling, but it didn't naturally fit into my existing content at the time, so instead of forcing it into my current space, I created a world where it could belong. Lauyara began as a world first, because without the world, none of the other ideas made sense. It became a place where creativity, storytelling, music, visuals, and personal expression could all exist together. I also found that fantasy allows me to communicate things that I struggle to express directly, especially when I learn best through repeated experience and visual storytelling, and there are ideas and emotions that don't translate easily into straightforward explanation. So Lauyara became a way to express those things in a form that feels natural to me, while still being something others can understand and engage with. A lot of what I want to share through my content is connected to ADHD, maladaptive daydreaming, growth, identity, and emotional experience, and fantasy allows those ideas to be explored in a way that feels more accessible and less clinical for me. The world itself is also shaped by influences like Middle-earth, The Witcher, The Chronicles of Narnia, like I mentioned before, along with basic understanding of Dungeons & Dragons world building. Shout out to my good friend who helped me understand this. Lauyara is structured as a material plane, which helped form the foundation of how the world works. The name Lauyara comes from Lauya, an elvish-inspired word meaning to grow or to flourish. The Ra was added to give it a more complete elven word sound, but the meaning remains the same. And growth, that idea sits at the centre of everything. At the heart of Lauyara is the Arboretum of Lauyara. The Arboretum is a living forest. It shifts, changes, and responds to the traveller moving through it. Paths move and landscapes change, and nothing stays entirely fixed, because life itself is not fixed. The Arboretum reflects that reality, and it is always adapting to the journey of whoever is moving through it. However, there are certain locations within it that remain anchored, and these are the core places within Lauyara, each representing a different aspect of growth and experience. So, the Crystal Waterfall is my character's main place of refuge within the Arboretum. It represents healing, rest, creativity, and solitude, as it's specifically something only she can access. For me, it comes from a very specific need, where every so often when I'm getting a bit overwhelmed, I need a place away from people, surrounded by nature, animals, and beauty, where I can just step back from everything. It's not really about escaping life, but just more about a reset. A place for me to refresh mentally, to relax, to spend some time alone, and to focus on either myself or my faith. It is also a major source of musical inspiration for the world itself and for the creative work connected to it. Then we have the endless halls of knowledge which exist beneath the Arboretum. Endless is not its true name, but the name given to it by those who speak of it. So it's not safe and it is dangerous. People who enter often do not return. Some are lost, some are driven insane, and some simply disappear. It's called endless because of how it feels, vast, infinite, and impossible to fully map or understand, which it's kind of terrifying, but I wanted endless to be that name given to it by locals, specifically. It represents knowledge, but also that idea that not all knowledge is safe to pursue. Curiosity can lead people there, but survival depends on awareness, discipline, and understanding when to not go further. Okay, so third, we have Eden. Eden begins as a wasteland, and that detail is intentional. It represents responsibility, care, and growth through consistent effort. and nothing in Eden changes without an investment. It reflects the idea that potential alone is not enough. Growth requires action and attention, and also persistence over time, even when it's difficult. One thing I will say is everyone will get an Eden in this forest. They have to learn to grow it, and as they grow and mature, so does the garden. Now we have the Paths of Treachery, which are one of the most dangerous regions within the Arboretum. They are unstable, consistently shifting, and very misleading. They represent temptation, avoidance, and self-deception. The moments where it feels easier to choose a shortcut, even when something inside you knows it's not the right path. And unlike the others here, they cannot be mapped, and they do not stay in place. They are often accompanied by what is known as a grifter, which can also shift and cannot be reliably tracked or located. Most people cannot perceive them clearly, and navigation depends entirely on discernment and judgment in the moment. The forest will still respond regardless of whatever choice is made. And those grifters that I mentioned, I'll do a video on them soon. And then we have the Settlements of Life. The Settlements of Life are scattered communities within the Arboretum. Each one is formed by travellers who have chosen to remain together in one place. No two settlements are the same, however. They are shaped entirely by the people within them and the experiences that they share. They represent belonging, connection, friendship, and community, and they also reflect a simple truth that no journey is ever taken entirely alone. And a little cool detail that I decided to add is that everyone's Eden eventually becomes a settlement of life, which is continuing on this whole growth cycle. So some settlements of life are just small camps with a couple tents, some are villages, some are towns, some are cities, some are full-on kingdoms. It just depends on the growth of each one of these different settlements. And finally, the final place on this map, well, can't even be tracked on the map, is the Heart Chamber. It's one of the most personal locations I've created within the Arboretum, and you cannot search for it directly. It only showcases itself when someone has experienced significant internal growth. But the first time you can get there has to be through the endless halls of knowledge. It represents identity, change, and the realization that you are no longer who you once were, and provides you a place to be proud of where you have come from, as it will showcase all your accomplishments and how much you've gone through. It's not really a destination, it is a reflection of who you are becoming. And I know I said finally, but there's one more place. This is a place that cannot be mapped because it's not actually in the same place as the material plane. This is a celestial realm. I have yet to give it a proper name, but it exists well beyond Lauyara and especially the Arboretum. It is accessible, but only rarely reached. So for me, it represents faith, worship, peace, and a divine presence. For me, this is a space associated with my relationship with God as a Christian. It really reflects the feeling I experienced when I was baptized in the Holy Spirit in September 2025, with a deep sense of peace, joy, and clarity, and how that's changed now, how I've moved through life, and especially because of this moment. It is a place that may be experienced in moments of true worship, and may involve visions or a strong sense of presence. It's not something that's supposed to be entered casually. It represents grounding, peace, and something a lot greater than ourselves. Yeah, it's genuinely not a space you're meant to really be able to visit. You can feel like you're there, you can feel the effects of it, but you will never truly be able to visit it. Okay, so that is the beginning of the Atlas of Lauyara, a series I will be continuing myself as Tweedle Jess, where I explain the world behind everything you're seeing thus far. The Lone Tweedle will continue to exist within Lauyara as the storyteller, and in the future I will also be introducing and explaining the different characters within this world more clearly for you guys, so it's easier to understand how everything connects. But this series is a little bit different. This is the world from its source, and over time each of these locations will be explored in much greater detail. So thank you for watching. I will see you guys soon, but the Lone Tweedle will be back in your next video. Goodbye.